everybody. My name is Drew, and I am a psychotherapist here in New York City. And today we're going to talk about the Enneagram 9 subtypes. Now, always when I'm doing these videos, I want you to feel understood, seen, and known. It is my goal to help you understand your personal accent. And so what I have to do is get underneath the hood and fiddle with all the gadgetry in there and see how this wire fits with that wire and that tube goes into this tube and what do those oils do and what does that fluid do. And that is my favorite part of the Enneagram, and specifically the subtypes really help us understand our personal accent. This is getting more fine-tuned, deeper in, and when I first found it for myself, I'm an Enneagram 4, and it helped me realize that, whoa, I do life in a different way than other 4s. And so I hope to help you understand how you're a unique 9. Now, we are always all 3 subtypes. And what I always say to people is you have to watch all 3. The self-preserver, the sexual, and the social. What people will do is they'll just watch their own, but they don't understand that these 3 are always working together in coordination. They are like a triumvirate. And so they each serve a role in our lives. Even if you have a dominant, maybe you are a self-preserver, and your most or least used is the social. They are still coordinating and working together. And so as we understand all 3 subtypes, we understand ourselves more deeply, and we understand how we move in the world. Now, the subtypes are instincts that helped us protect ourselves early on, and we still use them. For some reason, you chose a specific type of subtype to help you move in the world and protect yourself from the world. And then it hits up against your passion and your sin. So your Enneagram number, right? If you're a 9, then your sin is sloth, or your passion is sloth. And then your subtype, your instinct, hits up against that passion, and it creates 3 different types of 9s. And essentially, there's 27 different types of Enneagram numbers. If there's 3 for each of us, we got those 27. So we have a dominant and a repressed, and one might be really dominant, one might be really repressed, but hopefully as we get older and more wise and learn ourselves more, they start to look like this, and they start to blend, and they're all working together. And that's why I say watch all of them, because it will really give you a more insight into how you're layered and complex. The self-preserver worries about physical needs. They often are worried about their routines and what they're putting into their body. The sexual type is a one-on-one type. They look for exalted moments, intense moments. And so that one-on-one type will talk way more about the relationships they have with individuals or small groups. And the social type is worried about the group. How does the group view me, and how do I fit into the group? So you'll often hear when you're talking to an individual, them emphasize a certain type without them even knowing it. You'll see that the self-preserver might talk about needing resources and needing solitude to get away. And that sexual type will talk about the friends they have and the individual relationships and the conversations that are going on. And that social type will talk about their groups. Also, we are at a different level of health always. So from unhealthy to healthy. So even today, as I talk about the self-preserver, the sexual, and the social type, I'm really talking about a spectrum. And I'm usually emphasizing more of the unhealthy stuff, so that even you healthy types who have worked very hard on yourself can just magnify that. So the psychotypography, the little contours and valleys and heights that we have, we need to understand them deeper, and the subtypes help us do that. And like I said, in my own journey, it helped me really get deeper into who I am. So I hope that you watch all 3 and know that they're always working in coordination together. You 9s like to tranquilize yourselves in the trivial. You fall asleep to yourself. So this is a way to not refuse reality, to look at your shadow and understand it more. Because in the shadow, there's both good things and bad things. Things that we don't think the world will accept that's good, that we need to pull out. and things that we think are unacceptable that might need to be worked on a bit. So my hope is to do that with you. Again, my name is Drew. Hopefully this will be rewarding for you. And if you want to reach out to me for individual work, whether long-term or short-term work, or even just one-time consultation, get in touch with me. You can do that on my Instagrams or on my website, drewnewkirk.com or drew@drewnewkirk.com. All right, folks, hope you appreciate this and enjoy it, and let me know how you experience it. All right, we are going to get into the self-preserving nines. Now, this is a special one for me because one of my best friends in the world is a self-preserving nine, and we have probably had the most battles as friends, out of all of my friends, the most conflict. And this is already probably you're saying, well, a self-preserving nine, like they are avoiding conflict all the time. How could you have so much conflict with them? This is one of the tricky parts of the self-preserving nine. And in nines in general, yes, you guys are avoiding conflict, but I think self-preservers are going to be the most likely, you'll see, to be able to have conflict. And additionally, when they have a strong 8 wing, they can be really concrete and set in their ways. And so they can be pretty confusing for us. They also tend to somaticize. So what does that mean? Somatic, they feel things in their body, and their body becomes kind of the avenue for them knowing themselves. And so you'll find that they talk a lot about their body. They talk about doing things that are concentrated on the body, maybe yoga, meditation, being out in nature. They often feel very connected to nature. You might see them as mystics, the people who are kind of crunchy. Their body feels into things. So often you'll also hear them talking about having instead of being. Now, what do I mean by that? They might talk about the things that they possess or the things that they want to acquire. They might talk about food a lot. Instead of talking about themselves in a sense and who they are, they'll talk about what defines them in what they have. Like they'll explain their food or things to express themselves, but aren't directly talking about self. So routine is also a very common component of the self-preserving nines. So you'll see that they also talk about routine a lot. Now, this is what I always say when you're thinking about subtypes and you're talking to somebody or you're thinking about yourself. What do you concentrate on when you communicate? Now, as a one-on-one or a sexual type myself, I'm often talking about the individual relationships I have with people. But you'll hear in the self-preservers that they talk about the resources they need. So often you'll hear them talking about food or their routine. So try to catch that in yourself. And also if you're talking to somebody that is a self-preserver, you might catch that in them. Now this is a quote. I like to hunker us down in quotes. So here's a quote I think is pretty, something that I think a self-preserving nine would really gravitate towards. It's a Kierkegaard quote, and it's from Stages on Life's Way. And it's about solitude. Here he says, "O friendly spirit which inhabits these places, thanks be to thee for always protecting my quietness. Thanks for those hours passed in serious recollection. Thanks for the hiding place which I call mine. There, quietness increases as the shadows lengthen, as the silence grows. What a formula of enchantment to conjure within. How inebriating is quietness." Now, this is a self-preserver's joy to hear this quote, I think. The idea of getting away, of being in solitude, of getting quietness, of restoring your energy. And the self-preserving nines will often do that with food and things, collecting things, and their routines. And so they move away from the tedium of talking and the tedium of connection because that can wear them down. But as I always say, those who fear solitude should worry about community. Now, conversely, for you self-preservers, those who fear community should fear solitude. Now, it's just something to hunker you down before we really get into it. But let's talk about a few other things. Here also, patience. Now, my friend who's a self-preserving 9, who I was just talking about, who I've had the most battles with, has also been one of the most patient people with me. They can also be very patient in themselves, to a detriment at times. Too patient. There is a danger of being too patient. And so I often say to my buddy that he can want to bubble bath in serotonin, the hormone serotonin, that anything safe, comfortable, predictable can be his nemesis, actually. He wants it, but if he overindulges and stays in the bathtub too long, he might not get the things done in life that are meaningful to him ultimately. And for a lot of you self-preserving 9s, it's hard to find out what's meaningful to you. But when you start doing that, then you can be kind of lulled to sleep from getting into action. So we have to have initiatory acts. What I mean by that is acts that are that first act that you move into. You take that step of fear, but also some confidence from within that you are supposed to take this step to start a thing. And because of that initiatory act being so difficult, it requires us to have kind of a voluntary displacement, to get out of our comfort zone intentionally. Live yourself into new ways of thinking and doing. And so I'll end with this. As Goethe says, we must plunge into experience and then reflect on the meaning of it. All reflection and no plunging drives us mad. All plunging and no reflecting, and we are brutes. This is the healthy discomfort we are looking for. Contemplation and action. So the self-preserving 9 can get stuck in too much contemplation, too much time alone, too much retreating from the world and indulging in those things that keep them safe and comfortable, and not enough healthy discomfort. So let's get into it and start fleshing out a little bit of what is your ability to, one, commune with nature and the things that sustain you, but also the possibility of communing with the world with more engagement. All right, you self-preservers. The self-preservers are considered the collector. I like to call them the routiner. They often have some very incredible routines. And so again, I said, listen to what they talk about. Listen to how often they talk about their body or their routine. You know, this makes them feel pretty safe. They focus most on this, but what it does is it replaces the need to do deeper dives into themselves, to dig deeper. So their stuff, the things that they do, the routines that they have, the food that they're putting into their body can keep them from themselves because they obsess about it. And you can see that they can be often very active into these comfort zones, meaning you might see them have a whole ritual around their workouts and their reading and etc., whatever they're into. You know, they might make reading every morning a very ritualistic thing, which isn't necessarily wrong. But it is when it is devoid of connecting to self. So, like most self-preservers in general, they often cannot spend enough time on themselves. Now, if they do not spend enough time with themselves, though, watch out, they can become irritable assholes. But if they do not spend enough time actively and intentionally working on their internal world, you better also watch out, self-preservers, because it could be a downfall for you. So their insatiable nature can be directed at a variety of things. Good stuff, bad stuff, exercise. It could be that they overeat. It could be that they watch everything that they put into their body. It could be that they work out all the time. It could be that they don't. But a lot of you have to figure out what the right level of energy towards these things is. You're probably not going to get rid of this insatiable nature to build a quadri of things. Now, watch also, self-preservers, for your asceticism, like what you'll do without, what you'll deprive yourselves of, and how much energy you put towards that. You'll often hear a self-preserving nine talk a lot about what they're depriving themselves of, what they're going without, and often it's connected to their body. Maybe connected to sex, could be connected to how determined they are to be disciplined in a certain area. And it can define them. So yes, they have these appetites like food and they might hoard, but it could be that they have found, as they've gotten healthy, the right level of energy to give to these things. Now, the unhealthy self-preserving nine will have an unhealthy level of distribution of energy towards these things. And also, watch how organized or disorganized you are in your approach to collecting. Now, I've seen a lot of self-preserving nines that have really cool things that they're obsessed about. One of the things that's rough for them, though, is making use of it for the world. So at worst, they can have like salary-less positions and energy given towards things that they love. But for some, they can monetize what they're into. And they can actually put that energy into the world in a way that redeems the world. So this is a challenge to you, self-preserving nines, for the things that you are into collecting or routinizing, the things that you obsess about. Can you make use of them so that the world can enjoy them too? That's my challenge to you. All right, let's move on. So let's talk a little bit more about routine. And I've got to commend you, self-preserving nines, that your routines are often admirable. It is so hard for people to get into routine. It's one of the foremost questions that clients will ask me is, how do I start a routine? What do I start with? And if you know anything about routines or about discipline like this, habit really starts often from one root, something small that you build off of. Some people call it a keystone routine. And so nines must be commended for being so routine oriented. We learn a lot from them because of this. But they like to storehouse, so it can become an obsession that goes too far. They want to reserve it, store it, look for it, hunt for it. They want to get their needs met and things that they might need. They're prepping for what they might need. So you might see nines that go too far and collect in advance for things that might happen. Now, think about what they talk about. They often are talking about diets and workouts and coffee routines and bowel movements and digestive tracts. They want to stay on track. And if you try to budge them, their thick trunked roots, they can remain in the soil. They like the rain. They want the minerals and the vitamins and the sunlight and the photosynthesis. And what I mean by that is nines cannot be budged easy, especially self-preserving nines. Their roots go deep and wide. Now, they might accumulate some really cool things. They might have some really great routines, but many can be messy or disorganized with it. And so even finding some organizational principles for your routines and the collection of things can be important to a nine so that they can live more fully. Now, when we're building a strong routine game, and again, you self-preservers, you nines, if you didn't, you'd be soup. So you must have some routines. And we commend you for that. But when you're building that routine game, these are the things to be conscious of, is how much of this is getting in the way of relationship. Not only relationship to others, but relationship to self. Now, what you'll often find with self-preserving nines is they will resist your need. They don't want too many needy people around them. They'll resist your disappointment in them. They'll resist your disruption of their precious schedule. And it's often expressed kind of passively. So it can be a little bit like they just voluntarily pull back. There is a like unapologetic vanishing that happens sometimes with the self-preserving 9. They don't want to be burdened by you. And so that kind of indirect communication, and many are direct. I want to say this, that a lot of healthy self-preserving 9s are very direct with their need to stay on track. And that's the beauty of a healthy self-preserving 9 is when they get on track, they start really valuing that routine so they get the routine done so that they can spend more time in communication with the world. They will not deny their responsibility to community. Now, how they go about doing that, are they efficient with it, is going to be the question. But as Kierkegaard says, the inward work is the true life of freedom. So when you are getting more familiar with yourself and your routines and what you collect, you can actually start knowing what's an appropriate amount of energy to put towards that, so that you can also be in the world and connect with friends and family and loved ones. This is your challenge, folks. It's the ultimate distraction for the self-preserving 9 from life and real intimacy with others to get overly stuck and attached to their routine, because it will detach you from you. The solitary battle that you go through will keep you from the communal engagement. All right, let's move on. All right, we are going to get into a very complicated part now, which is that the self-preserving 9 could be a steamroller. Where the sexual 9 could be steamrolled, the self-preserving 9 could be a steamroller. So I like to call them the subtle steamroller, or forceful yet feathery. That it is confounding because there is this like softness and beauty and patience to a 9, but the self-preserving 9 has this bite. They're the most in touch with their 8. And so when I say that somebody is a hard 9-wing 8, what I really mean is their first highest score was a 9 when they tested, and their second highest score was an 8. I'm a 4-wing 3, I'm a hard 4-wing 3. So that means that I was tested as a 4, but my second highest number is a 3. So that wing is really strong within me. So when you're with a 9-wing 8, that is a hard 9-wing 8, it can be really complicated. It's kind of a cognitive dissonance thing kind of going on. So you'll often find that they are the most concrete, the most certain, most forceful. They can be most in touch with their 8. So self-preserving 9s in general, even if they didn't have an 8 wing, are most in touch with their 8, that part of them that doesn't want their equilibrium disrupted. Now you'll often see that they, to get out of their stupor or their falling asleep on themselves, will get scrappy with people. Will create some conflict. I had some consternation about working with clients that were 9s, and I'd see that they could at times create conflict. So I started asking the questions of them as, can 9s create tension so they can achieve peace? And most said back to me, and especially the self-preservers, yes. They're trying to, in a sense, kick somebody off the island, because when they are stuck with a hard person, it's confusing and it makes them discomforted. And so they might actually push the confrontation to get that person pushed out or regulated, or just in a healthy way challenged, so that the overall group or relationship is more peaceful. So you'll see with a self-preserving 9 that they might amp something up first and create some tension in order to create peace, which is what all 9s are looking for, that harmony, right? Now it's interesting to ask a self-preserver which areas of their relationships would they say is the easiest to create tension and the least easiest to create tension. I've heard it all, but for one client, they said, family was easiest. I'll create the most tension in my family. Then work, And then lastly, friends. Maybe friends were the least likely they are to confront, because you're both choosing each other and you don't want to disappoint this person. But watch out for that. It can be sometimes a passive pushback, but it can be confusing for people in nines' lives that they are with somebody who has a certain aggressiveness, but also has this softness, and you're left kind of wondering, where do you stand in that relationship? Now, I often think that they pick some tough people to be around. I am a intense guy. And so my friend, who's that 9 wing 8, who's a self-preserver, I think picked me because there was going to be pushback, but he gets 4 fatigue because I'm a 4. He gets some 4 fatigue, and I get a bit of a 9 fatigue at times from him. Like, come on, you know? What you'll often find too with self-preserving 9s is they can be a bit more invasive. This is really tricky, but I think I have a few examples, and I don't want to out anybody, but you might see a self-preserving 9 get really intense in conversation. I don't mean like confrontive, but share a lot with somebody. And that person's kind of getting pulled in, but then, like I said before, that the 9 can kind of vanish because they're going to go into their routines and their solitude. And so they can give a lot to this person, but not have that next layer of relationship in which the communication about the relationship goes deeper about what's happening between us. So it can leave people kind of confused. And you can often see this romantically, where a self-preserving 9 might get pretty deep with another person, but still be somewhat of a mystery and detached from them. So intimacy and love and where are we in the relationship might send the other person in that relationship reeling. Okay, I want to talk about intensity though. There is a weight to self-preserving 9s. There's a real gravity to them, an intensity. It might take you years to realize how intense they are, but this friend of mine would always say, "You're so intense," and I am. I'm an intense guy, as I said, but I thought he was intense, but it was hard for me to get a consensus with other people because I was one of the only people really having that kind of deep contact with him. But I think as he grew and matured, he realized there was an intensity to him and is an intensity to him. And now he's owning it. Because sometimes they don't want to be troubled by the influence of others. And so they push back and get a bit concrete. They often have very strong philosophical stances. They often like to set the pace. Those unbreakable routines they have might really feel heavy to other people. So they might get their way quite a bit. And this is where you self-preserving 9s have to be honest with yourself, because most self-preserving 9s don't even know that they're angry or that they have an intensity to them. But you can be emotional and turbulent. You can be a lot. You could often be impatient and feel people burdensome and push back on them. So rest assured, self-preserving 9s, we know that there's some intensity there. It's just about you owning it because it's not necessarily wrong. Now, often I think too that the self-preserving 9s see quite a bit, maybe more than the other 9s. They're a bit more aware of the waves of the world. So life would be quite boring for them if they didn't have some more intensity in their life and actually gravitate towards some people who will push their buttons a bit. So you self-preserving 9s, look for this, because this is a part that you have to own. It's often too confusing for others because it's matched or it's sitting alongside of this very peaceful, softer energy. And when they are integrated more fully, you will be more known to others. And I know that could be scary. But as you get more known to others, these intimacy might deepen. Now that will require more of you, and it might be burdensome. And that is often the trouble for the self-preserving 9, is they want to retreat into their solitude, their routines, their collection of things. But it is to the neglect often of those relationships. And so they might have to practice building intimacy and being known, and then staying in the hard stuff. Okay, let's close this out with a few more things, and then we'll end. All right, one of the beauties of being a friend with a self-preserving 9 is also one of the hardships of being a friend with a self-preserving 9 is they can often not have a lot of requests. This is good and bad. They're not that much of a needy soul. There is this solitaire that is played out in their own lives with themselves. And so they don't tend to be as much of a burden or have as many requirements that we have to fill. They don't push the boundaries as much of need. They might not call on you a lot. But because of that, the relationships can be on their terms. So they might suggest that you are leading. But because they don't demand too much, and not a lot is asked of them, they can sometimes get away with navigating the relationship and leading it. And again, this can be confounding. They can be in their own world, and they need to merge the least out of all the 9s. So if the sexual type is needing to merge the most, the self-preserver is needing to merge the least. And they almost seem like they don't need friendship or relationship as much. So this can be hard for people engaged in relationship with them. Now, it can also take them a long time to merge with the things that they're into. While they have routines and they have a collection of things at times, they often will be slow to love a thing enough to want to make it their living, their purpose. So they can be slow to attach to their hobbies, to their loves, to their passions. And sometimes the too much time alone doesn't allow them to have enough friction with others to facilitate more growth of those loves. Now, self-preservation is always an act or an effort against disintegration. If we can get what we need, then we will not disintegrate. And I like this quote. It's from my favorite book, which is always one of those things when I tell people the name of my favorite book, they're like, ugh. The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker. He won the Pulitzer for it in the 70s. And he talks a lot about the body in that book. And he says this: the body is definitely the hurdle for us. The decaying drag of the species on the inner freedom and purity of yourself. The basic problem of life in this sense is whether the body will predominate over one's individuality or their inner self. Now, because you self-preserving 9s can preoccupy yourself with somatization, with the body. And again, we all have this deep relationship with the body, whether we know it or not. Maybe you guys are just a bit more concentrated on. It can move you into a position of denying your responsibility to the world because you are so concentrated on. So even as we were talking about these 0 requests, it's sometimes because you are so concentrated on this thing. And there is a call from the community, from us, from friends, from family, to come into relationship with us more and actually need us more. So we love you for your ability to facilitate, even in our lives, an awareness of routine and the collection of beautiful things that we want or need, and also the body. How you can be a person who facilitates some growth in our body because you are so concentrated on yourself. But again, we must moderate and mediate between too much and too little. All right, I hope I was able to open up some avenues of understanding for you self-preserving nines. Again, my name is Drew. If you need work individually, whether that's long-term or short-term, get in touch with me on Instagram or write me at drew@drewnewkirk.com. And I hope you subscribe. I hope this was useful to you. And as always, in the words of Raina Marie Rilke, everything is yet to be done. Everything. Have a good one, guys. Hope this was useful to you.